What I am about to write here, I have not mentioned to a single soul in all of my years, aside from a very few select family members who would understand and would not run their mouth, only those who I can really trust. I had to wait until now to be sure I wouldn't be killed or tracked down. I suppose it could still happen, but the person who did this, let's just say I don't think he's in a position to get to me anymore. This actually happened to me back in the 1980s. I can't tell you who he is, but I work for a very wealthy man as a cleaner / maid, I guess. He was a big movie star, pretty much at the height of his fame, which continued on for a long time. How I got the job is a long story. Let's just say that my mother was a family friend, and by that, I mean that they had an affair and were raised the same way, if you catch my drift. I might have given away too much information already. Anyway, I was also raised in the same way as these two. I don't want to go into the experience because it was horrible, and I am glad I managed to get my way out of there. It was basically like a cult. Not basically, it was a cult. This man had stopped caring for my mother, but I don't know. I was allowed to work for him in this manner. I was not really interested in making it big time or having a high-profile job. I know it's only the beginning of my story, and it already sounds like BS, but I promise you, I'm telling you to the best of my ability. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that nowadays, this man lives in California and is part of a very high-profile club, but back then, he had a very rural property that he spent a fairly decent amount of time at. It was not his main house. It was more like a vacation or a party home, if I had to describe it. It was this big estate with a massive plot of land in practically the middle of nowhere, and it was surrounded by tons of woodland and forests. You could not even park up next to the property. If you were staff, you had to walk miles through thick woods just to get to where you were able to park your car, or to reach a main road if you were traveling a different way. This basically meant that there were no neighbors around within many miles of the place. There was just nothing around at all. It was completely deserted, just all isolated on its own. Because of this, staff like cleaners and other essential people were permitted to actually sleep over on the property overnight if required, usually if we were going to finish late with preparations or if there was something we had to do the next day. The accommodations were horrible. It was like in the basement of the property, down a long row of stairs, so it was all stone floors and walls, absolutely freezing cold, and we all slept down there with a bunch of single beds with metal frames stacked next to each other. It was like a dungeon with how it was set up. It looked really horrible. I think it was used for storage in the past. The beds just had a bare mattress with no sheets or covers and just a single plain pillow. Some of the beds were disgusting. I used to always have to take a shower the second I got home because it felt like there were things crawling through my hair. The night I want to tell you about was an odd one, to say the least. I had finished most of my cleaning duties, but the boss, who I will just call T, showed up out of the blue without so much as a warning. Obviously, it's his place, so who cares, right? Well, he was furious with us. He had decided that he was hosting an impromptu party with some of his wealthy friends and that we should have foreseen this. He was shouting at the chefs and asking why there was not a table laid out with food. He was cursing at some of the cleaning staff and asking why the beds were not set up, especially for these guests. These guests were also very wealthy. They were also actors, but on a lower rung. I guess they were there to suck up to tea and get themselves ahead. Who knows what the party would involve? I had thankfully never had to be present for one before this time. The only time I was on the property for one before this time, I was sleeping in the basement and was hearing weird screams and weird sounds all night long. I have no idea what they were doing at all. I didn't even ask, not like I could even if I wanted to. He was a pretty temperamental guy. T would always have like a normal, calm demeanor, and then in 2 seconds flat, he would fly into a fit of rage, even at the smallest thing. It was really easy for people to get underneath his skin. He was good at that, hiding it until he just wanted to explode. I suppose that's why he was an actor. It only got worse from here. He just spent a few minutes laying into everyone. As far as I was aware, not a single member of staff on the property knew he would be there that day, let alone hosting a party. He started saying how we were all so disrespectful to his guests, how we are so lucky and privileged to work for him, and how this just shows that we do not deserve the job. He was always really abusive. On more than one occasion, he had beaten up workers when he had gotten mad. I remember that one time I saw him beat a chef with a hot ladle because he was not happy with his meal. I'm talking so badly that the chef was bloody and could not even speak after the beating. He was whisked to the hospital and nothing ever came of it. The chef was too scared to talk because he needed the job and the money. He actually came back to work once he recovered. I don't know if maybe he was paid off or something else, but he got no apology, no money I could see unless it was under the table, no nothing. It was just normal. He just came back right to work, no acknowledgement whatsoever. Even all of us were too scared to talk about it. But this time, T just absolutely lost it. He grabbed one of the chefs and just smacked him. He went into the kitchen and grabbed a rolling pin and hit him over the head with it while asking why he had not prepared a meal yet. None of us got involved. I'd seen what happens if you do before. You do not want to ever get involved when he was like this. He just kept taking turns on other people, and I stood rooted to the spot with my eyes clenched shut, just praying he would leave me alone. My heart dropped when I felt my hair being grabbed and I was yanked down to the floor. He spat on me. He spat on my face, actually. It was horrible. I almost gagged and threw up. After he spat on me, he then brought over a chair from the dining hall. He forced me over his lap by my hair, partially pulled down my pants, and he started hitting me with the rolling pin, like just really, really hard, until I could feel like a burning pain. That is how hard he was hitting me. No matter how much I screamed or shouted, he just did it again and again, and then pushed me to the floor. I could not help but just sob. He was screaming all the while about how we were all worthless and could not ever get anything right. He told us that he had been wanting to get rid of all of us for a while, that we were a waste of money. He fired all of us right there on the spot, each and every single person that was there. He'd fired people like this before, only to offer them money to come back the next day. It seemed more serious this time. I'm not sure why. It was pitch black outside. Not all of us even had cars to make it home. Some of us were supposed to stay over in order to make preparations for a separate event at the house in the morning. But he didn't care. He actually got violent with another person who mentioned this, one of the wait staff for the morning. The whole time, his wealthy friends were just sat there watching the scene unfold. They stared at us. They had these weird looks on their faces. One of them was just smirking. He looked so, I don't know, pleased. And I shit you not, I'm not making this up. He licked his lips when I caught sight of him while I was being beaten. They all just looked so enthralled by everything that was going on. Like they were excited, I don't know. But there we were, thrown out of the house and told to walk miles through the woods to start the journey home. None of us even had flashlights. We had to start the walk in pitch blackness. I had no choice. I just started the walk. My feet were killing me because of the heels I was wearing, and I had to remove them. Some people lingered outside the property, talking to each other and trying to figure out how to get home. You couldn't just call someone back then, especially not out there. T obviously would not allow the use of his house phone. I could hear some laughing coming through the open door while I was walking into the start of the woods. It didn't sound like T though. I could hear them, I presume his friends, telling him how funny that was and how excited they were for the party to get started. I'm a bit of a slow walker, so I was not really able to keep up all that well with everyone else. I only really kept up with a few of the slower people. Once most of us had made it into the woods, things got weirder. It was pitch black, of course. The woods were silent, and there was a full moon out that night, which made things even creepier. T had closed the door shortly after I heard the laughing, but now I heard it slam open and hit the wall. That's how aggressively he had pushed it open. I could just barely still see the door from how far away I was. T and his friends had started walking outside, and his friends had weapons in their hands. One of them had a hunting rifle of some kind. I'm not sure what it was. One of them was holding a baseball bat, but T was not carrying anything at all. Upon seeing this, everyone lingering behind me started screaming and running away. T started shouting at the top of his lungs. He was telling us that if we were not off of his property within a minute, that he was going to shoot us for trespassing. It was not even possible to move that quickly. He had completely lost his mind. Everyone got scared, and I just started running. It was too cumbersome to hold my heels, so I just threw them into the fallen leaves. I was asking people to slow down, to help me, because it really hurt to run barefoot, but nobody did. Everyone was just focused on running themselves. And at one point, I hit something that stung my leg, and I just lost my footing and fell over completely. My ankle was throbbing, and it really hurt to put any pressure on it at all. I was begging for someone, anyone, to just help me up, but no one would stop and help me. I landed near some pretty tall grass and heavy foliage. It was enough to be able to lay down in and not be spotted, I think. I wasn't really sure. I didn't really have time to check. There wasn't really any way to test it, and I didn't have the time anyway. I just had to hope. I had to just quickly pile leaves over myself and try to stay as still as possible. Otherwise, I thought I was going to be shot and I would be dead. And so I did. I tried to lay still and just hold my breath. I could still see, partially, but not fully. It was at this point I started to hear some kind of a howling noise. It sounded like a wolf. No, like a pack of wolves had all gathered near the property and were just howling. But it sounded, deeper, almost. It sounded like a demon from hell. I wondered if maybe T had bought some dogs that he had trained. I was fearing the worst. I was thinking maybe he was going to release some animals to chase us down. Then I started to hear calls, like whistling, but also one of those animal call whistles that you could buy, the really horrible sounding ones. There were still people running to catch up. Some of them were on the heavier and unfit side, so they were still near me. Beyond that, though, I could hear footsteps trampling leaves. It was T's friends, but he was not with them. They were all holding weapons, and I was terrified I was going to be spotted and shot to death on the spot. But then I saw something in front of them, running at an incredibly high speed, like an animal on 4 legs. But it was not an animal, at least, it didn't look like a typical animal. It was running on 4 legs, but they were not legs at all. It was a blur, so I could not make anything out, but it looked like a man running with his hands on the ground. A hairy man, but it looked so angry and had these sharp teeth protruding from its mouth. Its eyes were just a yellow blur. There were no whites in them at all, and its nose looked upturned and more like the snout of a dog. And the skin on the face, it was like blackened and, I don't know, a different texture, kind of like that thick padded skin you would see on a gorilla. And its hands too. I only saw them later, but its hands did not look right. The fingers looked as if they were all glued together and just had sharp points on all of them that went into a finger-jagged point at the end. It looked like one big claw instead of a hand. If you've ever played Mortal Kombat, it looked like Baraka if the blade was just his hand instead of coming out of his arm. It moved so quickly, I don't even know what I was seeing. This thing caught up to one of the chefs who was running away. He had no chance at all. I just sat there, praying inside my head, hoping that no one would notice me. This thing just leaped into the air. It leapt an impossibly large distance, and when it came crashing down, it impaled the chef in the back. It was all so quick. It just used one of those big claw-type things to keep on impaling him, again and again and again. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, and boom. Then it sank 2 claws in at once, and it just pulled, and the shaft, he came apart. I really wish that was it. I wish my nightmare ended there, but I had to watch another man die. He was close by to the commotion, and I guess he knew he would never be able to outrun the thing, so he climbed up a tree that was nearby. I watched him almost fall from a high branch once or twice, while this thing attacked the chef more and more. He actually spotted me once he was high up in a tree. He looked down at me, and we made eye contact, and he was about to make a motion with his hands, but I just shook my head really quickly, and he stopped. I had tears just falling down from my eyes, but I was not making any noise. They knew that he was up there. They had seen him. This thing was sniffing at the base of the tree, and T's wealthy friend shouted out, "There is one up there at the top." The thing did not even acknowledge them or look back. I didn't understand why this creature was not attacking them, if it was some random rabbit creature. If I'm honest, I didn't understand what was happening at all. I watched this thing use those claw things to scale the tree. It was like those things that mountain climbers use, those axes. It just leapt up high and sunk its claws in one after another, and just kept going up and up and up. The man was just screaming his lungs out and begging for help, but those wealthy friends of T just laughed. They could not stop laughing. Once this thing got up to the same branch as him, that was it. Just as quickly as the chef, this thing it impaled him in the neck with both claws, and before I could even blink, his head was not on his shoulders anymore. I actually heard the impact of it hitting the ground, but I never saw where it went. After that, I just watched those wealthy friends take pot shots with the rifle as they sauntered after the other people who were running away. They were just chatting with each other like everything was normal. And then that thing leapt down from the tree and started moving quicker than I could ever see again. I did not dare to move even a muscle. I don't know how long I laid down there. It must have been multiple hours. I just closed my eyes and prayed that no one would find me. I kept hearing screams throughout the night in the distance. I never personally saw anyone else die, but I heard gunshots. I heard howls, and I heard people screaming. People that I had worked with. I knew that it sounded like them. This just kept happening intermittently while I laid there in silence. I don't know how I did not have a heart attack on the spot. I'd never felt so unwell from anxiety before. I felt like my heart could beat out of my chest. So, I was just there in the pitch blackness, and eventually, I hear a rustling sound and some footsteps. I opened up my eyes, and I could see a flashlight bobbing back and forth, and there were some men walking through the forest towards the property. I thought that at any second now, that flashlight was going to hit me, and that I would be done for. I thought maybe someone told them where I was, and that they had come back for me. I saw T's friends walking along, but I also saw T there with them now, which didn't make any sense. I never saw him leave the property, and I would have known if he left, even with my eyes closed. Steps in those woods made so much noise. I had no idea how he got there or where he had come from. That was not even the worst part. His friends were all dragging bodies behind them. They were just completely uncovered, clothes ripped to shreds, and they had blood all over them. I even saw one of the other maids being dragged through the dirt. It made me feel even more panicked, if that was even possible. One of them was missing a fucking head. I heard them talking. I don't remember everything that they said since I was so panicked, and I did not write anything down. But I remember someone saying something about getting a specialist to clean everything up in the morning, that T should not worry. T, he was completely naked. He had no clothes on at all, not even underwear. He was covered in mud all over himself. His hands were filthy, and he had blood all over his hands and arms and everywhere really, but I could not see any cuts or wounds on him for the blood to have come from. It was not until much later on that my brain started to put two and two together. It was an unreal situation. It was not something my brain would have ever considered had I not seen it with my own 2 eyes and had many years to come up with an explanation. Even when I heard them go back into the property and slam the door shut, I did not move straight away. I was too scared. I thought that maybe it was a trick, that they were just waiting by the door for me to move, that they already knew I was there and were just having fun with me. When I finally did get the courage, I moved as quietly as possible. I did not want to wait until morning. I thought I would be caught for sure if I did. That walk through the woods to the road was just as horrifying as everything else. I don't want to go into any more details, but I saw a lot of bodies, mutilated bodies. I don't think I saw a single one with a bullet wound. They were all stabbed or impaled or just ripped apart. There was not even a way for me to get back home. I had to walk across gravel and sand and jagged rocks barefoot. I had bad calluses, and my feet were bloody by the time I made it to the nearest town. There were not even any cars driving by for me to hitch a ride. I think one truck went by that entire time, and it just completely ignored me. I did not want to go to the police, but I had no other way to access a phone. The sheriff let me use the phone in the station, but he forced me to give a statement about what happened. I just told him I got lost in the woods and was attacked by an animal. It's all I could really come up with on the spot. I was still too frightened for my brain to even work properly. And I mean, it wasn't exactly a lie. He just dropped it after I said that. He did not ask me a single other thing. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. Before he asked me about what happened, he asked me what direction I came from. I told him that, and then about the animal, and he just clammed up. I could swear I saw him make a weird face. It seemed really weird actually, considering he was so insistent on knowing every single detail beforehand, and then now he just didn't care. I managed to place a call to my mom. She seemed really worried. She drove out there and picked me up, and I eventually made it back home. She knew that something was up immediately. She forced me to tell her. I just told her about the beating, about being kicked out, and about them chasing us into the woods with the gun, and that's it. I did not mention the rest. I did not mention any deaths. She believed me pretty much immediately. She didn't even tell me that she was sorry. She just said that I had to leave right then and there and not come back. That I should take what money I had and leave to a different state. I was so fucking confused at this. I was scared and confused, and now my mom was just giving up on me. And why? I didn't do anything wrong. Luckily, I had a little bit of money saved up. I left after a few days. I have not talked to my parents since then. They have not tried to get in touch with me either. I was, happy to get away, honestly. They were not very nice parents. Before I left, though, there were a few messages for me left on the answering machine. 3 of them, all about 30 minutes apart. They were all from T. He told me that he wanted me to go back there immediately to help with preparation for this morning event. He was telling me that he was really sorry, and that he had no idea what was wrong with him, firing everyone on the spot like that. That he didn't know what came over him. He told me that he was wrong and that he was sorry, and that he wanted to make it up to me by upping my pay and giving me a flat bonus. He said that all I had to do was go back in and take my job back that day. He said that I could just get right back to work. I obviously never answered or went back. I never got another message. I never received any trouble. I don't think he could get me anymore. That's why I'm finally writing all of this. It sounds unbelievable, but even if no one believes me, it is a weight off of my shoulders. I held in that guilt for so many years. So, when I was young, I lived in northern New Jersey, in a development not too far away from the woods, in a place it was clear there had been a previous settlement. There were old rock walls to mark boundaries, and there was a lone standing fireplace further back in the woods. Now, for some reason, for all the time I spent playing in the woods with my friends, I never really thought about the stone fireplace standing in the woods on its own for no real reason. I had grown up with it always being there and never really thought about the thing. It just seemed normal to me. It was about the height of a 2-story house and was wide enough for a large fire. I can only assume that because the stone was more substantial than a wooden house, it was the only part of the house to survive. I'm not sure if it has any relevance, but the legend surrounding the NJ Devil mentions a chimney, and the encounter happened pretty close by to it. When I was around 10 years old, I remember I was chasing fireflies or something around my backyard, and they took me into the woods. Not very far though. I would always stay within sight of the house at nighttime. Now, the interesting thing that night is that the crickets that normally make a shitload of noise were completely silent. This was not that uncommon, but while this by itself was not that important, I also noted that further into the woods, there were no fireflies at all. Now, I had chased a few fireflies in the yard to the woods, and there were now none when normally there would be at least a few more. It was when I was looking for the lights of the fireflies in the twilight that I saw something that I wrote off later until very recently. What I saw deeper in the woods were 2 dull red eyes, and instantly I was paralyzed. It was far off, but seemed to look straight at me. Then came the smell. It was something that at the time I could not place, but a few weeks later we had a scrap bonfire, and I would realize that the smell was that of burning metal. After what seemed like an eternity, there was a twig snap in that direction, and I bolted to the house. I did not look back, and I did not sleep that night. From that night on, I never went outside at night without the crickets chirping. That's it. No revelation, no murder, no future sightings, nothing. I know that this is pretty boring, but I still hope that you can help me. The thing is, at the time, I knew of the legend of the New Jersey Devil, and for a time it scared the shit out of me. As I grew older, I wrote it off as me making things up. I like to think I am logical, and so I just forgot about it, thinking it must be some bad lighting or something. I had not thought about that for years, and a few years ago, I moved out of the country. One night, I was outside drinking with a friend of mine when I thought I saw something in the woods on the way back. That's when I told him about what I had seen when I was younger. Being drunk, I thought it would be a funny story of how stupid I was. We had a laugh about the situation until I mentioned the smell of burning metal. That was when my friend told me about goatmen and showed me one of the stories on here. That night I did not sleep. I simply shivered in my bed, but not because of the cold, but because I was drunk and terrified. Then I looked up goatmen for myself and started to think more and more about that night, and the more I thought about the situation, the less I could ignore what I could not make sense of. I would write the whole thing off as a trick of the light and inconsistent memories of how quiet it was, but the smell, that smell was unique and is not something I could ever forget. I feel crazy for talking about it. It makes me sound insane, but I know what I saw and smelt and heard. I can't think of how I would remember those 3 things if they did not happen. The red eyes are consistent with other descriptions of the NJ Devil and the smell and the silence that fit with descriptions of goatmen. So when this happened to me, I went to a strange city for something I can't really remember. I was staying at a hotel. I had a shower. When I get out of the shower, the mirror is obviously fogged up. Someone has written, "I am going to kill you," on the mirror in the condensation. Not since I was in the shower, but they've obviously written the thing at an earlier time, and when it fogged up, the writing just became clear again. Someone who stayed in the room last was having a giggle, I guess. It was pretty funny. I went outside. I get back pretty late on. About 3 minutes after I get inside, I hear a knock on the door. I look for the peephole. There is a guy just standing there, looking down with a cap on his head, so I cannot really see his face. I can't make out any features at all. No way. I eventually just watch him walk off. Wait, he is not walking off. I see him knock on the door on the opposite side of the hall. He gets no answer there. I watch him walk off in the opposite direction to the exit. Not amazing or anything, and just weird enough to sound not real, but it did happen, and it was very, very strange. I figure the two events were unrelated, and he was probably just going to rooms until one opened up the door, and then he would rob them. The writing on the mirror was probably just some chump trying to be funny.